while she's on a talk show. And then she has to act like that's normal. So in the very beginning of the book, a kid almost falls into an alligator enclosure. So to stop the kid from being eaten, she jumps in and like acquires the DNA of the alligator, which makes it go to sleep. But everyone's like, disaster girl! She saved this toddler!
Oh.
And then she's allergic to the alligator, so she accidentally turns into an elephant in her house, and her house just falls apart. And her dad works in media, and she's like, you know what I want to be on is on this TV show where this famous person who's infested by a yerk is going to try to get kids to join the sharing.
Okay, you know what, Amy? I just actually realized you can totally talk about Animorphs a ton in the next series.
Oh, it's so true.
But,
yeah.
But maybe for now, we should stick to a lot of the Lioness. Hello, and welcome to Tortall Recall, the podcast where we reread the Tamara Pierce books and yell about them. My name is Abby, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Amy, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Aurora, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Gus, and my pronouns are they, them.
And we are back to discussing Lioness Rampant, which, actually, now that I think about it, not sure we said the title in the last episode, but that's what we were talking about.
Well,
whoops.
They're not going to know which book we're referring to. There's no way to
they'll figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
Our listeners are smart.
There's no way to tell. We didn't have clues.
It's not like it's in the title of the episode or anything.
What if they think we're talking about, like, Animorphs number 12?
The reaction.
No, okay, we're not, despite all appearances, I'm sure, we're actually not talking about Animorphs number 12, the reaction.
We could if you want. Send us an email.
No, but we're back into Lioness Rampant, and we left in the middle of Social Justice Corner, so let's get right back into it and talk about queer stuff.
Woo!
Yeah.
So there's a couple of points where Alana pretends to be a boy again, specifically when they join up with Thayet and Burry, and she gets so excited to pretend to like dress as a boy, and it just makes me really happy that she gets to have that time.
Well, sometimes she pretends to be a boy, and so like a lot of the time she's just she just dresses the way she wants to and gets read as a boy.
Yeah.
I like how comfortable she is now with, like, she can present a bunch of different ways, and she's, like, really comfortable with all of these. So she'll, she's okay wearing dresses. She's okay, like, with her really beautiful thing that she wears to that Thayet design that she wears to the presentation of the jewel. No, I think it's wonderful that she's really coming into, herself and doing what she wants in terms of how she portrays herself to the world, and like she's really okay with this, and yeah, I love it to the depths of my heart.
Love it. Oh.
Yeah, Oh, you go, Gus.
I was just going to say there was a part fairly early on when some woman is flirting with Liam, and Alana gets super jealous, and then we get our first actual reference to queerness in this series.
That queerness exists.
Reference. Yeah, and like, what does the woman say? She says, like,
just like, oh, the boy's in love with you.
Oh, so the boy's in love with you then, yeah. And it's like, wow, I guess this isn't an actual instance of, like, queerness, but like...
Right, no, it's ridiculous that we have gotten an acknowledgement that boys can be in love with other boys, but not in a situation where that's actually happening.
I don't want to be this person, but I did read it as, like, a sort of, like, boys can't be in love with other boys, so I'm going to diminish your emotions by, like, saying this thing that's, like, an insult to you.
I mean, I definitely think it was supposed to be somewhat insulting, but it was acknowledging that the possibility is there that a boy could be in love with a boy.
Oh man, yet again, our bar is so low.
Yeah, I don't know, I kind of read it as, like, why would you have a stake in this? Like, let me point out how ridiculous you sound by saying this. So I don't think this is, like, a queer championing, you know?
Yeah, I guess you could read it as, like, you know, what, the boy's in love with you? That's totally ridiculous. That would never happen.
Yeah, and, like, again, I don't want to be that person right now, but, like, also I don't want to give credit where none is deserved.
Absolutely.
I can't tell. I mean, you know, death of the author, it could go either way, but I can't actually tell what she intended there.
Same.
And I think regardless of what either the intent is or the outcome is, like, no matter how you're reading it, it's still not great.
No, of course
at
not.
no point is there any sort of, like, wow, this is actually a good step. I just, like, I wanted to point out that it had been
here
technically
it is.
acknowledged.
Alana finally learned that queer people exist.
Yeah, and, like, I think someone pointed out that Tom is, like, her twin brother, who is like,
very gay.
Canonically gay, but
oh my
that
God,
doesn't
he's
mean
so gay.
Alana knows.
No.
Depending on your definition of canonically.
Well, sorry, extra canonically?
Yeah, word of God.
Meta-canonically?
Yeah.
Yes.
But, like, there are a lot of people who don't realize that people in their family are queer, so, like...
True, but also, I mean,
fair.
as we mentioned in the last episode, everyone in this universe except for John is queer, so Alana's definitely also queer.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question about that. Liam.
Bye.
Yeah, I think so too. Do you remember when he says, they were talking about Roger?
Yeah,
and
no, and he like
said that
looks
he'd
off
met him
into
once,
the distance and is like,
and
I
his
met him
eyes
once.
turn this
Yeah.
like pale green. I'm like, oh, did you now?
And pale green is when he's flirting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Liam and Roger have slept together. It's canon.
Yeah.
There we go.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, at least the age gap there is
It's better.
probably not that much, is it?
No,
much
I think it's
better.
probably
Oh,
not.
man.
I don't know if we have exact information on how old Roger is, but he's not old. He's like in his 30s probably, right? Which Liam also is.
Yeah, as is. Yeah.
I can accept that as a ship, honestly, in a way that I can't accept Tom and Roger. I don't think it's a good ship, but I can accept it.
Tom and Roger is like...
Messed up.
It's bad, yeah, no. I mean, it's all about Roger just manipulating him.
Yeah.
Okay, can we talk about, like, the degree to which that is not canon, but the degree to which that is a thing?
Tom and Roger?
Yes. Is it at all present in the narrative?
I mean, what I would say is that both actually Tom and Alex have technically, I guess, canon motivation for hanging around Roger without introducing queerness into it, but both of them have, like, very sort of weak reasons for doing that, in my opinion at least. Like, there's, you know, Tom got manipulated into bringing Roger back, but there's no reason that they have to, like, spend all this time together afterwards, but they do. You know, Tom says, like, I'm not your keeper or your jailer, but then he and Roger just hang out all the time. And, you know, Tom is not a villain at any point. Like, he's not at any point working with Roger to bring down John or the kingdom or anything. So, like, the only real, the only real queerness I see there, I guess, is that, like, the narrative doesn't make sense if there's not some connection between them. And same with Alex, I think, because you get the motivation, I guess, that he just really wants to duel Alana again.
Yeah.
But there's so much of, you know, Roger saying, like, and you, my squire, what do you get out of this? And, you know, Alex, like, looks him in the eyes really intensely and, like, bows to him and is like, you can guess what I want.
Yeah,
and,
what
like,
did he want?
That was so vague.
Like, what did he want?
Was it, like, power in the kingdom? Was it something else? Like, I don't know.
Well, no, I don't think so, because Alex knows that Roger, like, he says later, you know, people like Delia who are doing this to get power are gonna be disappointed.
That's true.
Yeah, so, like, I really did just read it as, like, a weird sort of, like, almost queer but not brave enough to be queer and also, like, messed up sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, if you take out the idea that Roger is, I guess, manipulating these young men in a romantic way, then the narrative just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but, like, at the same time, it is not present in the narrative.
Right, no, it's not explicit there.
Right.
But it's subtext.
Yeah. But it's, like, also very weak subtext. Like, if I had gone into this without knowing that, like, all of this stuff was happening behind the scenes because of you guys, I wouldn't,
sorry,
it probably would have flown over my head. Like, I would have thought, like, the Alex thing was weird, and I would have been like, that's a really bad motivation for Tom. I don't understand why she's making him do this. But I would have assumed it was, like, you know, not great writing or something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I don't know that there's really a lot there in terms of, like, explicit canonical facts, but reading this as a kid, I did read Roger and Tom as queer. Like, I got that. So there's something there that indicates it. I guess the one thing that I noticed was George is talking to Tom about his powers or something, and he says, like, does your friend know? Meaning Roger, in a way that is kind of, like, innuendo filled, I felt. So, you know, there's a little bit there, but not much.
We should clarify for any listeners who do not know, Tamara Pierce has said in interviews or something, interviews, etc., that in early drafts or early versions of the book, Tom and Roger were in some sort of relationship, and also that Roger is or was in an early version bi.
Yeah, specifically Tom is gay and Roger is bi or was.
Yeah.
I think we've been referring to Roger as being queer coded, and we may have referred to him as being like a gay coded villain.
Yeah, I think we did that some amount, and I think we also somewhat discounted the idea that he could have had a relationship with Delia based on his queer coding, which, if he's bi, he definitely could have. And I think actually Tamara Pierce has mentioned that. Did she do that in the book? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was in the book.
Yeah, that they were lovers, so.
Yeah, it just, like, said in the text, it was, like, Delia, who had been Roger's lover, and I was like, this was not in the earlier books.
That text was not there, but sure.
But sure.
Also, it's, every relationship Roger could, like, potentially have is disgusting to me. Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, he's a bad person.
Right.
Yeah, he's terrible.
But also, the only people he hangs around with are significantly younger than he is, and, like, very easily manipulated, which I don't love.
Yeah, he is a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but, like, there are villain love interests that I can buy.
Okay.
But, like, you know, a significantly older man who, like...
I mean, I buy it. Like, I don't ship him with anyone, but I completely buy him as, you know, this very queer-coded villain who has, you know, I guess basically seduced all these young people into following him.
Oh, yeah, I think that I misspoke there. I think what I meant to say was more of there are villains where I can, like, the relationships are things where I'm like, that makes sense, or not that makes sense, but, like, it makes sense that you would want to see more, like, that you would want that dynamic and, like,
like you're saying that you ship it. Like, there are villain relationships that you ship, and you don't ship any of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just... This is not a thread that's going to take us anywhere.
The thread is, do you ship this? And the answer is no.
Right, but, like, you're not, like, why would anyone like, I don't know why that's even a thing to talk about. you know?
just like you know, it squicks me a lot. And I guess that's what I was going to say. This was about me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a reaction that's very, you know, supported by the narrative, because even if you don't really read them as queer relationships, obviously Roger's relationship with both Tom and Alex is very manipulative and harmful and leads to both of their deaths.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any other queerness stuff?
Alana has a big crush on Thea.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Galahad.
Of course.
Her breath caught in her throat when she saw Thea all dressed up.
At one point, there's a line that's just, Alana had other plans for Thea, and I'm just like, what are those plans?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great. Not much more to say about that, except Alana's super queer.
Big, giant crush.
Yes.
Next. I just feel really bad about Alex and Tom all the time.
Just all the time. Oh, man. Alex was like, he was, like, such a, like, he was very, like, cold and, like, I don't know, I want to say, like, a jerk in this. I love him so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every scene he was in.
I know, I love, like, there's not really a big reason to love him in this book specifically, but gosh, I love him.
I don't know.
Just, like, they've got the, like, villain plotting scene with the little villain squad, and everyone's all, like, I don't know, upset about their plans failing, and then Alex is like, I told you guys not to do it, like...
I feel like I should have mentioned this back in feminism, we can cut it out, but I wanted to, while we're talking about the villains, bring up that one moment when, Delia and whatever the other one's name is. Josiane, thank you. Mm-hmm. Like, decided to, like, mean girls at Alana.
Okay, wait, I have thoughts about this that are related to Social Justice Corner, though, which is, like, after that interaction, which lasted, like, a minute, Alana goes to Miles and Raoul and Gary and is just like, so she's crazy, right?
Yes.
Like, Josiane is literally crazy. And, like, okay, she does stuff later, but, like, it just really bothered me.
Well, also, I'm not super into the general portrayal of Josiane as just, like, right, like, literally insane. Like, she's an axe murderer at the end. She literally has an axe.
Yeah, I strongly disagree with that in general. I strongly disagree with the fact that she, like, shows up for a second and then Alana's just like, I don't know, I just got crazy vibes. And also earlier in the book, it's like, it's from John's perspective for like a minute, and he's like, Josiane didn't really get the message that he was tired of her. It took a while.
Right. Yeah. No, her motivation is like, ooh, she's the crazy ex-girlfriend because John rejected her and now she's, like, obsessed with bringing him down. But, right, like, then when we get John's POV, he's just like, I tired of her quickly. Which does not cast him in a sympathetic light.
Well, most things don't cast John in a sympathetic light.
Yeah, it just, like, I don't know, it just, like, really bothered me that was even a point of her, like, of her villainy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this book in particular brought up insanity a few different times, and I think the most upsetting one probably is with Josiane. And they're like, you know, her family, like, produces a mad one every generation. Like, there's a lot of inbreeding. There's bad blood in that family. It's just all really bad.
Yeah, it's not good stuff.
Just some bad stuff.
I think it's also really interesting. I guess this could go in the spoiler section, but I'm going to be vague about it. You know, we're gonna see a lot more of the Copper Isles in the future, and I think that it's interesting how that's set up here, I guess. Even though I guess unintentionally, but right, it's not, even when they're extremely villainous for the most part, it's not great to have, or especially then, it's not great to say, every couple generations, one of them just turns out crazy.
It was every generation, actually. Okay. But yes.
It was really messed up, and it kind of brought me out of it. You know, mental health. It's important to talk about it.
It is. I think we should mention the other couple times that it's brought up.
Yeah. I do want to say, like, we're using words like crazy and insane a lot here, because that's what the book does. Those are not the terms that are great to use to refer to actually mentally ill people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to bring up more stuff, Gus?
Yeah, just a couple things. Which is that Roger is referred to as being insane post-sleep, or, you know, after having been brought back from the dead. There, you know, he's had, like, a bit of a personality change. He acts very differently. And, you know, his motivations aren't particularly clear.
Yeah, they never really explain what his plot is, other than, I guess, just to destroy the country.
Yeah. Which maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But right, I mean, he's still, given that he got his titles reinstated, he presumably is still second in line for the throne, so he could go for the throne, but, right, they've just sort of got this idea of, like, ooh, he's crazy now, so he's just wants to wreak havoc, I guess.
Yeah. And then the other one that's been brought up actually as a sort of a through line throughout all of the books, I don't know if it's been mentioned in every single one, but it seems to have been, is that Alana has mentioned a few times that, like, insanity runs in her family.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and it's been brought up in a couple, like, lighthearted ways. Like, I think she's referred to it when she's talking about, like, why she decided to, you know, disguise herself as a boy.
Right, she usually brings it up, like, in reference to her doing something, you know, incredibly out of the norm or risky or brave.
Or, like, unconventional.
Yeah.
I think she mentioned it once or twice in relation to Tom. And obviously, like, I think it was initially brought up about, like, her father. So, I don't really know how to read that other than it's just, like, it's kind of some bad stuff in there.
Yeah, a little iffy.
It's not nuanced.
Yeah, and as long as we're talking about this, I think we kind of skated over it in our last few episodes when we talked about Woman Who Rides Like a Man, but there was also definitely a narrative in that book of, you know, the old power-hungry shaman, quote-unquote, going mad, you know, and attacking Alana for that reason. So the fact that it's come up with multiple different villains is not the best.
No, it's bad.
Yeah, okay. I think the thing that bothers me is that they use the term insanity and crazy as a value judgment.
Yes.
And that's what I don't like about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not. It's just a thing.
Right, well, and repeatedly the idea is, like, you go crazy, and then you just want to destroy things, I guess, mostly. Because that's what, you know, because the shaman attacks Alana, and then Josiane starts axe murdering, and Roger changes his goal from becoming king to just wreaking havoc. So, yeah, it's not a good narrative.
Yeah.
No.
But I guess let's keep moving.
Yeah, we can move this insanity section so that it's not in our queerness section.
Well, let's say that we had transitioned to a different mental health section. This was not part of our queerness section. This was a separate issue.
Right.
Also, this is entirely unrelated to either queerness or mental health. But I just would like to mention that I'm very pleased that that Roger's amateur jewelry making came back at the climax.
Thank God.
It continued to be relevant throughout. I'm delighted.
You know, it has been since the first book we've seen Roger's amateur jeweling and his jewelry. It's been an important plot point.
Yeah.
Of course it would come back.
Been a beautiful thematic through line of these books. Okay, let's move on to race. Let's start with Shang, I guess?
Yeah.
Sure.
Liam Ironarm.
So, they're called the Shang. He's the dragon of Shang. The unarmed combat that he teaches Alana is karate. Like, it just is.
Well, it's martial arts.
It's martial arts.
We aren't sure which one.
No, it's karate. I took karate as a kid, and it's like you know, she learned a sort of more, like, Western style of punching as a knight, and then, like, what Liam is described as teaching her is literally how to punch as if you were doing karate.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not, like, it is definitely a martial art, and it is definitely, like, an East Asian style of fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he's called the Shang Dragon.
Right.
And it is ridiculous that would be a white man.
Quite.
Yeah, and I think this is corrected somewhat in later books, but as of now, well, and Wildcat's borderline. I remember her description being that she's white.
I don't remember what the actual description is.
But certainly, this is, like, very vaguely remembered from Kel, actually.
Wiry.
So, spoiler, Amy the Wildcat returns.
Oh, no, she's in the first book, I know.
Yeah, okay, cool. But, right, yeah, I can't swear to the fact that she's white, but, right, definitely we're getting a really Asian-coded culture with a fair number of white people in it.
Yeah, and, like, a clumsily Asian
Can we refer to the Shang as a culture? They're definitely an order. Sorry, I just want to be...
No, I was just saying, and it's, like,
Does someone have, like, a
clumsy.
train whistle going on in the background?
Yes?
Okay, I can hear it.
Okay.
Gus, you'll probably get that same train in...
Oh, nice. I don't think I can hear trains from where I am, actually.
Oh,
But,
right.
like...
You're both in the same city.
Yeah, we are.
Aurora, you should come visit my cat sometime, even though you're allergic.
Can I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Will do.
Okay, excellent.
Anyway.
Shang.
Cat. Wild cat.
I feel like the Shang are like, the whole time I was reading the previous 3 books, I was like, wow, what a clumsy way to Asian code someone, but at least she's doing it without saying the thing she said in Hand of the Goddess. And then it turns out that this is a redhead with color-changing blue eyes, so, like, it's feasible that he could be, like, mixed race, but I think he's just white.
There's certainly no indication in the book that he is mixed race. Yeah. Every descriptor that we get is one that you would expect to find on a white person.
Yeah.
And, right, like, I mean, this is related, I think, to the fact that we did, as you mentioned, Master Saicham appears in this book again. He was referred to in the previous book or a couple books ago, as the Yellow Man, so we assume that he's Asian. But, the Mithrin priests as an order are also coded as somewhat Asian, I think. Mm-hmm. And there's, that's like the main religion in Tortall, or one of the main religions. So there's certainly a fair number, I think, of Mithrin priests who are not Asian. And, like, Tom studied with them and he's not Asian.
Right.
But this is the Shang Dragon, who is, like, the oldest surviving Shang warrior in 300 years.
The oldest surviving Shang Dragon.
Yeah.
The oldest okay. I misread that.
Because there have been multiple dragons.
I mean, the Wildcat is older than him.
Okay.
Yes. It's just that the mythical beasts, and especially the dragons, right, don't tend to live long.
Yeah, because right, they're the best ones, I guess, so they have a target on them. But, like, he's literally the best of the Shang warriors, and he's a white guy.
Yeah.
Which, like, in a sort of Watsonian sense, if the Shang are an order who take kids from all over the world, like anyone who wants to come and train, who they think does well enough, it makes sense that they would be a racially diverse group. But it's not a great look to have this very Asian-coded culture and fill it with white people.
Agreed.
Yeah. It was so jarring for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about the Khmer. I mean, they're not perfect, but I think, in a lot of ways the Khmer are what the Bazir should have been, I guess. Because, they're a group of tribes who are not white, being oppressed under white colonial rule, or I assume that Thea is described as having very light skin and looking like her dad, so I assume that the monarchs of Serain are white, but we don't, I guess, actually know that.
I didn't read them as white, but also I read there as being a racial dynamic going on, but it wasn't specifically white oppressors. I don't read Thea as white, but I don't know if I'm meant to. I know she's...
Well, right, that's something we can talk about. So we know that she's biracial. Her dad is a Serain lowlander, and her mom is Khmer.
Yes.
And she says that she looks like her dad, which includes having a strong hooked nose and very light skin.
Right.
But we never actually get a description of any lowlander Serain people, I don't think, so we don't really know if they're intentionally supposed to be white.
Right.
The Khmer are clearly not white.
Yes.
Right.
I think it's worth pointing out that, okay, how do I phrase this? Let's see. That historically and also contemporarily, there is racial and cultural oppression that happens that doesn't involve whiteness, and when we consistently just infer that all narratives around race involve whiteness, then we are centering whiteness again in some ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And that I think there's like a very specific type of racial oppression that is perpetuated by white people, but that is not the be-all end-all.
Right. Yeah, no, and certainly the Khmer are, an ethnic group being oppressed under colonial rule by another ethnic group, but that is true whether or not Serans are fantasy white. And yeah, I don't actually, we mentioned this earlier, the comment about countries being cut from the same cloth, I think that was just Marin and Toussaint and Tortall and maybe Tyra.
Right. I don't think it was...
Right, I don't think that was Serain. So that could actually be a point against them being white, but I don't think we have the information to interpret in the book.
Yeah.
So I wondered, so at some point, I don't remember who said this, but someone said that, like, the Khmer, the Bajir, and, like, the
Doi
tribes people were all related to some extent.
Maybe had some common ancestry.
Yeah, which I feel like might even point to this kind of wider colonial narrative in which we have a lot of people that were perhaps, like, over a long period of time, like, increasingly marginalized.
Yeah, I could see that.
Including all of these groups.
Although there is, like, an interesting sort of crossover, I think, because I at least read the Doi as coded more Asian or, like, maybe Tibetan than Black, whereas the Bajir have mostly been, Arab, North African. So those are different groups that she's saying are related. Yeah, it's also, like, I guess, the Doi are perhaps fantasy Asian as an ethnic group. We also, like, we know that Master Saicham is fantasy Asian, but we don't know what his actual ethnic group is. Like, we've never received any indication that he's not Tortallan, but I just feel like she didn't really think out the race dynamics of this world very well.
Now that you bring that up,
but, back to what I was saying, I guess, in a lot of ways, the Khmer are what I think the Bajir should have been, because they are this ethnic group that's being oppressed, and we see them not, from Alana's point of view, but not from the point of view of the oppressor group. We see, we get Buri and Thayet's story. As members of the oppressed group, and we see, they've had really unfair legislation placed on them. They specifically mention that they're not allowed to, like, assemble in groups, which is, a real thing that oppressed people have had to deal with, and that's shown as really unfair, as opposed to, with the Bajir, the narrative was so much like, wow, can't the imperialists and the people they're oppressing just get along?
We're making some faces.
Yeah, so many faces.
Yeah. So, right, the Khmer are probably not perfect.
Right.
But, we get good, interesting characters that are Khmer, especially Buri, who's perfect in every way.
Yes.
And this is the first time that we've, I guess, heard about colonialism and imperialism as a thing that is bad, and, like, we hear about it from these members of the oppressed group, which I think is a great step forward.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't really appreciate that it, the amount that it's set up as, like, again, Alana leaves Tortall and finds this horrible, oppressive empire that's totally not like Tortall, It still doesn't acknowledge that this stuff is happening in her country, but it's definitely a step forward to acknowledge that it's not good that this is happening.
Yeah, and it does allow us to extra textually draw parallels between what is happening to the Khmer and what is happening to the Bajir. So, not good enough, but...
The story about Thayet's mother is just like, I love her. She's so cool. The line Buri said about, like, my mother and brother are buried at Calison's right and left hands. The warlord will lie in his tomb alone. Just the coolest. Wow, I love all of them. Yeah. Anything else about the Khmer other than Calison is the best?
Cool that it's recognized that they have their own language. I'm glad that was there.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. It makes so much more sense than whatever is happening with the Bajir.
Yeah. Oh, super cool that, what is it, Thayet mentioned that the Khmer tribes also were led by women, which is just neat.
Yeah. And it's clearly just a part of their society that women fight too. Which is great, rather than in the last book where Alana came into the Bajir society and they seem to have basically the same opinions on women as Tortall. Like, it's nice to see a different culture with different gender dynamics.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, other race things. I have one race thing.
Yeah!
The epilogue takes place when Alana goes back and visits the Bloody Hawk tribe. We hear from none of the actual members of the Bloody Hawk. We don't get an update on Kara and Kuram, which when she went back, I was like, yes, we get to see what Kara and Kuram are doing. They're not mentioned.
Yeah.
Extremely disappointing.
Boo.
And really, every time they mention the Bajir, it's just kind of this in passing, like yep, still part of the Bajir.
Right, and yeah, the like, you know, there's like groups of like young boys and young girls practicing riding or whatever, but like we don't get to know about them as characters.
We did see...
Oh yeah, and Raul is explicitly...
Yeah, he's also been adopted into a tribe.
Come on, Raul.
Yeah.
Come on. I believed in you.
Yeah, really? And we see a lot of the Bajir have come and joined the King's Own.
Yeah, which is interesting. I don't really know how to read that.
We can maybe analyze that more in the future. I'm not sure, but right. I mean, to some extent, it could be read as them assimilating into the culture of Tortall. But on the other hand, you know, maybe it's a good sign that they can get this like fairly prestigious position, and like if Jonathan and Raul have been like specifically recruiting them for the King's Own, that could be as part of an effort to sort of like
to like, you
know, to give them like opportunities in Tortallan culture rather than just like being very racist towards them, which is what we saw in like the first book, you know, that all Tortallans, I guess, were just pretty racist towards the Bajir. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to interpret.
Yeah. I want to say something about how, like, I don't know, it being included in the military of an oppressive government is not progress, necessarily. But I don't really have anything more than that.
Yeah. I did want to mention, I guess, just really quickly, that when Alana's talking about the sorceress from the last book, who we know was from a Bajir tribe but went to live in a village because she wanted to do magic, she actually calls her a shaman, which I thought was a weird choice, given that all the information we have about that is that it's a religious role in a tribe and not just a Bajir person who does magic.
That was odd.
Oh, and the other thing that was like racialized language that I wasn't super into was that, you know, Alana duels a couple people and then she asks Gary about them and he says one was Gollin and the black was Karthaki.
Yup.
So don't talk about people's race in that way.
Nope.
That's not the part of speech that you use that as.
Nope.
That is an adjective.
Don't call a person an adjective. Yeah. Like.
So, yeah, I mean, not much to say about that other than it's bad.
It's bad.
Yeah, she's gotta stop with the color words, I think.
She's gotta stop with the color words.
She doesn't know how to use them.
Nope.
Yeah.
No. I have a
What?
Nice.
What? Crossover.
You can cut that out if we're not allowed to take their sound bites.
No, I think we can give credit, like, which please, but you know, we love them.
Well, this is, I want to get y'all's thoughts on, like, opinions on this, but I thought there was some coding done so do you remember when Miles had that Sirajit agent go and track down Ralone, or Claw? And the way he's described is, like, very, very, like, kind of stereotypically, kind of Semitic.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't really know how to read him, like, ethnically when I read the book, but when you say that he's coded Semitic, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so...
Can you point to,
Sure, they talk about the only descriptor that they use for him is he's a little man, and he's nearsighted, And they specifically mention that he did some, like, very extensive accounting of his expenses, which are, like, all, like, you know, not great ways to be the only descriptors you use for someone.
Right, and I guess he's, like, well paid is another thing they mention about him.
And that he was very smart.
Yeah, and also just, like, the fact that, I guess we're meant to assume that Sirajit, or whatever it is his ethnicity, but that's not one that I've ever heard of. Like, that's not a country or a nationality.
Right. It's not a country that we hear of.
Right?
Yeah. So we don't really have a lot of context to interpret that word.
Uh-huh. But this was, I guess, perhaps the first bit of kind of, did you say Semitic coding? That we would have encountered on these books.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I really wish it hadn't relied so heavily on stereotypes, though.
Yeah. Fun how that happens. We actually had got a tweet from a listener a while back. This was back after, like, some of our second book episodes came out or something. So I didn't really know what to do with it then. But Twitter user Mosslam mentioned that they had not seen, that they had not noticed any specific Jew analogs. So I'm curious as to what they think of that, and as to what our other listeners think.
Yeah, no, I would love to hear from our listeners on this.
Yeah.
I also think you could potentially make an argument for Alex as being a Semitic analog.
That was actually the other part of the tweet, was that this person had read Alex as being Semitic, being coded as, like, dark.
Right, not explicitly being a different racial group, but constantly mentioned that he's sort of othered and constantly described as dark.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up, Aurora.
I will also note that there was a connection with the sorceress who left the Bajir and went to live in Hill Country, was specifically mentioned as living near Tiragan, which is Alex's hometown. So that was interesting as well.
Interesting.
So one other thing, which I just want to put out there, is that in the scene where everyone's getting introduced, you know, Theet and Alana and Liam are all getting presented at court, George is there, and he's in disguise as a Bajir.
Oh.
Was he in blackface?
I want to say no.
I hope not.
I hope not. But how... Yeah.
How else is he?
Did they mention his skin color at all? I feel like he was only ever referred to as tan.
They didn't explicitly mention it.
Please, listeners, if you have noticed anything, please let us know so that we can thoroughly condemn it.
Wait, as an imperialist nation, Tortall could have the same problem with whitewashing as we do. And maybe,
I mean, even if they don't, it's, like, clearly a problem that we have in our culture, so it's not an okay thing to put in a book.
But I'm just saying, maybe George isn't doing blackface. Maybe he just, like, is wearing the clothes and no one knows what a real Bajir looks like.
I mean, maybe. There are a lot of Bajir in the capital at this point.
I will do whatever mental gymnastics it takes for me to not have read and enjoyed a book with blackface.
I mean, that's not... We should probably acknowledge the flaws rather than doing mental gymnastics around them. But also, I mean, like, you know, the Bajir, like, do live under imperial rule in Tortall, so, like, you know, it's not unreasonable to assume that there are probably people of mixed race and various skin tones.
Yeah, and actually, this is the thing. I don't think I've noticed, and I've been trying to pick up on this. I've been trying to keep my eyes open for this. I don't think I've actually noticed any descriptors used for the Bajir in terms of, like, skin color. I mean, I think we've definitely been reading them as being people of color, and I also think that is not unreasonable. Because of the way that they're so heavily coded. But it's a fantasy world. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't remember any descriptions of them specifically as having very dark skin. So, right. I think that clearly we can read them as people of color, but we don't know exactly what they look like.
Yeah. I wanted to bring it up. It seemed like a weird omission, but I think it's just pretty easy to chalk up to Tamara Pierce not being good at writing about race.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one more sort of thing that's related to imperialism, and it's back on the topic of the Dominion Jewel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess specifically what I wanted to say about the Dominion Jewel is that the scene where, you know, Alana goes to take it and talks about the fact that, like, she stops trying to take it at some point and says, like, well, when you think about it, all of these heroes have stolen it.
This is literally stealing. Is this stealing?
Yeah. And then after she says that, the mountain range guy, Chitral, does give it to her. So that kind of, like, dispenses with the issue.
There you go. I like, kind of on the same lines of imperialism, that, so Chitral he's an elemental, and he's like, I think, like, the essence of time, and he's kind of, you know, not above all this, but, like, it makes it more reasonable for us to be critical of the gods, because they are, like, you know, they're just, like, people that live forever. And there's, you know, things like the elements and our very cool friend Chitral, who do not do this same kind of, you know, helping
meddling
empires be terrible. Yeah. And that, you know, the jewel is, of course, I guess his.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
he made it. It comes back to him.
He made it, and it comes back to him, and then heroes come and steal it.
Exactly.
He made it because he wants friends. He wants people to visit. Which, like, a good way to do that would not be to live on top of fantasy Mount Everest, but whatever floats your boat, my guy.
It's, at least I can, because it's called Chitral Pass, I kind of read it as, like, he is the mountain, or he's tied to the mountain in essence in some way. Like, you know, he's an elemental. I'm not sure he necessarily, like, could just go, like, live in a city if he wanted to.
Yeah, we don't know what rules he has.
This is related to my specific reading of Chitral, so, which I am not going to back down from, which is that he's exactly what he's presented as in the book.
Okay, you mean an ape with a sword?
He's just lying about all the other stuff.
They say explicitly in the book that, like, Alana could tell that this is just a form he was taking.
Maybe.
So I think your reading is
Alana
wrong.
thinks
Very
that she's
cold.
not magic.
She's very cold.
And
tired.
And also, Alana thinks that she herself, like, for books, she thought that she wasn't particularly magical. I think that we have an unreliable narrator, and I think this is
incredibly.
just an ape with a sword.
But Amy, he controls the weather.
Don't we all?
Oh my god.
He's an ape with a sword who is... He has, like, 3 points of characterization, right? He's lonely, he's an ape with a sword, and he's he's really into art for its own sake.
He really appreciates beautiful art and beautiful magic.
For its own sake, specifically.
Yeah.
And it makes him sad that Alana probably was thinking about function over form when she made her sword.
Guys, I was reading through this book, and there's a character that's just an ape version of that of those crabs that grab knives.
Okay, that's so far from true.
Listeners, Amy is, like, crying.
Yeah.
It's an ape. She has to fight an ape with a sword. That's the big climax of this book.
I mean, it's also not, because it happens in the middle.
That's the big center of this book. That's like the main end to the Dominion Jewel
Okay.
quest. Okay, I'm gonna be laughing. You guys can, like, silence my mic for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean, so, ape with a sword aside, you know, I do think that I like the commentary on hero and quest narratives and how they're basically, like, about going out and plundering stuff, you know, and Alana does ultimately end up doing that because she gets the Dominion Jewel, but she has a moment, at least, where she thinks about, like, oh yeah, that's what stealing is. Which is nice to see.
Very very good.
Everything about it is absurd. I love it so much.
Yeah.
This is when I decided this is a very good book series.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you remember the story? This is with regard to kind of the jewel and what it can do and the roles it plays in like wider structures. But do you remember the story about I think her name Zephram and
Miyaki.
Miyaki,
she's the thief. Zephram and
the lady.
Miyaki.
Zephram was the mercenary who pulled her out of a river. Anyway, so she steals the jewel, and then they go to Tyra, which was then like a city that was fit for thieves. You know, apparently like not described as not a pleasant place to be. And then they got the jewel, and birds started nesting there, and lots of people started moving back into the city, and I was like, is this gentrification?
I mean, you're not wrong.
Just wondering.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Gentrification is when a lot of birds start moving into your neighborhood and building nests.
No, but I mean, they described it as like, you know, somewhere that, well, they described it as like a pirate's nest, but I expect it drove property values up. And, you know, people who, you know, could have lived there before no longer could. And so even in its most like passive like form, or not passive form, but this is one of the ways that the jewel is reported as having like this very positive impact, but perhaps it's not quite as positive as initially it's portrayed to be. I don't know.
I don't think that we're intended to read Tyra as a case of gentrification, but I mean I do think there's something like, well, that is kind of what gentrification is like, you know, a bunch of fancier people move into the neighborhood and, you know, make there not be room for the poorer people who were there originally.
And, you know, sell the food that those people had originally made at, like, you know, a 300% markup and market it as, like, I'm sorry, I'll stop now.
Yep. No, right. I mean, gentrification, it's bad. I don't think that's intentionally what Tyra was, but I can see that reading. But right, also, there are some things that are given to us as just sort of positive attributes that the jewel has, and those include things like, you know, it will help Jonathan be a strong enough ruler to keep Tortall together, as if there was inherent value to Tortall being a country and being strong in, like, a military sense.
I think those are both bad things.
Right.
Yeah. Can I share my Slack name here, or is that, like,
Please.
me telling my own jokes? So when I got to that part in the book, I changed my name in our group chat to maybe the real Dominion Jewel was the countries we colonized on the way. And I think that's true.
You weren't wrong.
Yeah, I might have to put some of your Slack names on Twitter, because I have screenshots of all of them.
They're so good, Amy. Please let us share this
they're
with the
great.
world.
Thank you. I'm very funny and also talented.
Yes, agreed.
But yeah, no, I mean, the Dominion Jewel is a tool of conquest, at least some of the time, and I think we should acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And it reinforces, I mean, especially in the hands of an existing leader like John, you know, just reinforces the status quo class-wise and stuff. Speaking of class, I thought it was interesting that commoners can be presented at court in Tortall. And this is something that we'll see some more of in the future, but it does make Tortall a bit more of a meritocracy than perhaps real monarchies ever have been. In that, like, if you're the Shang Dragon or a very powerful and unique mage that we might meet in the future, and you're a commoner, you can show up at court and hang around just because of your skills and not because you have a noble title.
Yeah, I think Fayette, in particular, talks about Tortall in that way. So she talks about being very excited to, you know, leave Serain and kind of her place as a noble and go to Tortall, where she can build herself.
As a commoner, yeah.
As a commoner, exactly. And that assumes that there is, that there's the potential for her to do that.
Well, we do see...
And that this is known.
Yeah, we do see an instance of class mobility when George becomes a noble. Because best friends with the king.
I don't know how I felt about that.
He gets kind of like a My Fair Lady situation.
Then again, is it really moving up for him to move from being a king to being like a lord or whatever he is?
I mean, as king of the rogues, he has authority over the rogues, but also could be arrested and presumably killed at any time, so like, you know, there's clearly class benefits that come with being an actual noble.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, would you rather be king of Sealand or a congressman of the United States?
Counterpoint, sure. Either way, he's not going to die because he's friends with John.
I mean, yeah. And I do think there's something interesting about one specific king of the rogues and one specific king of the realm mutually supporting each other. That's probably very bad for, you know, the lower classes. That, like, it would be very hard to overthrow either of them because they have the support of the other.
Yeah. Tortall's doing great, guys.
So, right, I think it's interesting that, like, it would be really hard for a modern reader to get behind any monarchy that did not have some potential for class mobility, because we would just see it as, you know, very unfair.
Unless we didn't notice.
Sure, yes.
I'm sorry.
I mean, yes, that's true.
Please continue with your point.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
But right, like, you know, if they're gonna have common characters at all, you know, it makes sense that she would want to show us, like, here are the ways that they can, like, do well for themselves. Although I do appreciate that with George, it came with, like, you know, why do you have to make me respectable? God.
He was so insulted at first. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, right, that presumably that's not so much a feature of real historical monarchies, but it's something that's added so we can feel better about it. If not, great about the kingdom of Tortall.
Mm-hmm.
I love that the barony or whatever that George gets is called Pirate's Swoop for two reasons. One, it implies thieving still, which is great.
Yeah.
And two, it's the most fantasy name ever.
Yes. True.
Yes.
It's very good.
Pirate's Swoop.
Yeah. Also, it's a thing that pirates probably would do if they could.
Yeah. It's very dramatic.
Because that was some really good Foley work and also, like, a body comedy. So great work.
Great swooping.
What's the word? Physical comedy?
Yeah. Excellent swoop.
Yes. I made a big swoopy motion with my arms and did kind of like a Batman thing or a Dracula thing. I don't know what I was doing. It was good.
It was excellent.
So let's revive the dead author for just a little bit in Zombie Author.
We sure don't do a good job of taking authorial intent out of the rest of this podcast.
No, we don't.
No, we don't.
All right, well, we already talked about the race stuff. So
Right, and that's something, like, I can't really speculate on authorial intent there. Like, I mean, I can, I guess. It really seems like she, like, maybe someone talked to her about her position on race in the last book, or, like, she learned a little bit about colonialism, but I don't know.
I think, yeah. I mean, as with all things with death of the author, there is a point where authorial intent does not matter.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff is when you are writing things that could potentially harm real people.
Right. No, regardless of what her intent was, obviously her writing of race is harmful in some ways. Mm-hmm. I mean, right. I do think there was some good narratives about imperialism in this book, and there were also some bad ones.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I have something unrelated also to this that I noticed and just remembered right now, which is that the idea of drugging people basically without their permission comes back. And it seems like it's okay if you are drugging someone because they are about very nervous and about to go to a thing. But if you are drugging someone to regain agency, then it's bad. Is what it seems to say.
Wait, sorry, what are you referencing?
So it's like when apparently she let Faithful, like, partially spell Liam into not when she goes up to Chitral, and then it becomes, like, a big thing that is, like, condemned in a way that George literally drugging her is supported. And I have some, like, concerns about that and how that relates to specifically the way Tamora Pierce feels about drugging people.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Right, there's a time when Alana is drugged by her love interest, and it's you know, it's like supposed to be a cute thing he does, I guess. Like, it's supposed to be acceptable because he does it to calm her nerves.
Right, he's like after her.
But when Alana allows the magical drugging of Liam because he would stop her from leaving if she didn't, that's a huge... I mean, I can see, like, you know, any kind of drugging in a relationship is a trust issue.
It's bad.
Yeah.
But it's a different dynamic if you are doing it to regain agency versus someone doing it to take away your agency.
Yeah. And they're treated really differently.
Like, I'm not saying either is good, but they are different from one another.
And they're different specifically in the opposite way from how they seem to be treated by the narrative. Is what you're saying. Yes.
Which is actually a big concern for me, and I'm sorry that I didn't bring it up earlier during the social justice portion, but
this is really a social justice room.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so and related to that on like, you know, shaming that kink, like she really just leans into the age difference so hard with Liam.
Yeah.
It's less bad to read because Alana is like a grown-up now, thank God.
Yeah, she's an adult and she can form her own opinions better, right? Like, she's not gonna let Liam push her around.
Right, as we've discussed, she doesn't let Liam push her around.
Yeah. Well, she meets Liam when they are basically equals. Liam doesn't treat them as equals,
right,
but they are by that point.
But she knows that they are.
And I mean, they end up breaking up because, you know, he is not, like, she's really independent, and he specifically lists that as a thing that he doesn't love about her, but, like, she's not willing to put up with stuff from him. And, you know, that leads to their breakup, which is, you know, fine and good.
Hey, this isn't the most on topic, but I'd like to mention how much I like the thing Tamara Pierce does where she writes breakups that happen and then the characters stay friends.
Yeah, that was really nice.
I really liked that.
Although I have to say, the line where, you know, Alana was like, well, she was sad about their relationship ending, but she knew their friendship would last a lot longer.
That was ironic and beautiful.
That's fun to read when you know Liam's gonna die by the end of the book.
But I mean, that aside, that's a great line and I love it. There's so much irony in this book, and I love it.
There is a lot.
Tons of stuff about people being dead and never coming back. It's great.
Yeah.
But just, like, with, you know, Alana's friendship with John after they break up is, like, way better than anything they've had before.
Yeah.
Even if I still do not like John. And, like, she and Liam after they break up, it's like, they're friends, and it's nice.
Right, and they still have, you know, the good things about their relationship, which, I thought it was cool that they could relate to each other as being, like, you know, legendary heroes, basically. Like, that was a cool dynamic, and it was one that got to continue even when they weren't romantically involved. Yeah, so we're not really even doing zombie author right now. So maybe we should move on to the Queen's Riders and talk about friendship.
Yeah. My best friends Gary and Raoul come home.
I think I have a full page of notes on Friendship Corner just because there were a lot of things and they were really lovely.
Yeah, I've just been like writing little hearts in my book at friendship moments, and like there were so many. I drew so many hearts.
Do we get to go through them?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just say friendship moments.
Okay, so when Alana sees Raoul for the first time in a long time, apparently there's just a lot of hugging. They spend 5 minutes of like non-coherent talking because they're so excited to see each other, and it was just really wonderful and sweet.
They like just hug and yell for like 5 minutes before they can have rational conversation because they're so excited.
So good and so realistic.
Also, my favorite part of that is that the book calls Raoul her large friend.
Yes.
That's so good.
So good. He is a large friend and I love him.
He's such a good friend. And okay, so the other Raoul one that I wanted to mention is you know, when she's dueling all her old friends just for practice and for fun, and she beats Raoul really fast and accuses him of not trying, and he says, I'm just too used to you beating me. It's hard to change an old habit.
I love him.
It's very good.
Yeah, so Raoul is really good. Gary's really good and also a big nerd.
Big nerd. Big ol' nerd. He's so interested in all the, like, math that comes with, like, running a kingdom. Wow.
Yeah. He just carries piles of documents around and Alana is horrified.
Like, same. I love him. My good friends.
What a good friend. When on the side of some of her new female friends, when she gets her ears pierced.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
Oh, it was delightful. I mean, I love that it's just a room full of women, just like being there having a good time, laughing at Alana for passing out when she gets...
Laughing at her so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, she's a full knight, but she passes out when her
She
ears
comes
pierced.
around and it's like,
Very
Sayette
good.
was just laughing. Just laughing.
Yeah.
And then the section ends. It's great.
Yeah.
I also want to note in that, I mean, so Burry and Alana's friendship is the best thing ever in so many ways, constantly. But specifically when Burry and Sayette show up and Burry says, like, you know, you two need to be fitted for clothes. Good luck. Bye. She is just so uninterested in fashion.
She's so psyched that she gets to wear, like, just her regular stuff. And that her friends have to get all dressed up.
Yeah, I mean, I think she gets to wear, you know, very fancy Khmer garb, but right. She gets to just wear leggings and stuff, yeah.
She already has it, she's comfortable with it, she doesn't have to get fitted for it.
Yeah, it's great. But then she and Alana spend so much time together, you know, riding and like meeting all of Alana's friends and exploring the palace.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
And like exercising.
And then when they get introduced at court, and Burry says, like, you know, like, do I look okay? And she's all in her Khmer outfit, and Alana says, your mother and brother would be proud of you.
Oh.
And then Liam says, we're proud of you too.
Oh. The friendship.
It was very sweet.
How dare you?
Oh.
This book should have spent all the time on dumb love triangle stuff just with friendship, because the friendship moments are very good.
They're so good.
So nice.
Oh, the friendship is so good.
And when I say this book, I mean like the entire quartet, because I have it as one volume. I don't want anyone to think I just mean this book. I mean every single time.
I also wanted to give a shout out to Coram for being a great uncle and friend and
dad.
He does, and dad. Yeah, does some great. I mean, he plays a great role in like all of these capacities. Mm-hmm. So, you know, he teaches her to change a diaper. Also, he changed her diapers, which he points out all the time.
Yeah, and then okay, so when he teaches her to change the diaper, and she feels like kind of sad. You know, she's like, oh, like you could have had kids if I hadn't been here, like, taking up your time. And then he says that he never regretted it because he was busy raising her.
Coram doesn't get enough dad credit because Miles just comes in and is a fancy new dad with a lot of money and adopts her, and Coram doesn't get enough dad credit.
They're both her very good dads.
But no one else calls Coram her dad.
Okay, but, like, it's pretty clear with, you know, she doesn't even say out loud, you could have had kids, and he's just like, oh, I don't have any regrets about not having kids because I was raising you. He's her dad.
Yeah.
Like, we all know.
Yeah, but I want everyone in this book to acknowledge that Alana has two dads, and their names are Coram and Miles, and her other dad did not do dad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Miles didn't have a lot to do in this book, but when they were reunited, he did cry a lot, and when they hugged, which was very sweet.
It was so good.
Also the earrings.
Yeah.
Also the earrings.
It was very sweet.
He's such a good dad.
They're both good
She
dads.
has two good dads.
They're both really good dads.
Oh, they're so good. A lot of the stuff with Tom is really sad, but also just really, really sweet.
It was so good to get actual interaction between them, for one thing.
Yeah, right. We haven't for so long.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, they reminded us at the beginning of this book that the reason she's called the Lioness is because Tom got her a shield with a lioness on it, because he supports her dreams. But, there's just a lot of good Tom content, because there's a scene between Tom and Roger where Roger asks, like, do you trust me? And Tom says,
no.
I don't trust anyone. And then Roger immediately says, except your sister. And Tom's like, well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's the theme. The no trust. One trust.
Yeah, one trust. Which, I mean, like, that's the whole tragedy of Tom, is that, like, he doesn't have anyone that he can rely on except for Alana.
Mm-hmm. And Alana's gone.
But, like, he loves Alana so much.
Oh.
And, right, the other, Alana tries to play off Roger by saying, like, you know, there's nothing to forgive. You did me a favor. And then Tom just, like, scoffs at her and is like, nice try. Which is a very good sibling interaction.
Oh, man.
Animal friends? I have a moment that I loved, and I circled, and I put a lot of hearts and a lot of, like, 20 out of 10s, and it was beautiful. So, Moonlight.
Yeah, okay, this is, I think, the best line in the book, but go for it.
So, can I read it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, after, you know, she drugs Moonlight? Or Magic's Moonlight.
Not sure, yeah.
Because Moonlight would have broken down the stall to follow her up a mountain.
She leaves Moonlight behind.
Yeah. And so, she says, there are times in every rider's life when it's necessary to apologize to a horse. But Alana preferred not to have a witness. And then she steals an apple and pets Moonlight and compliments her and tells her what a marvelous horse she is. And then, even better, we get a Moonlight point of view moment where Moonlight checks on her, you know, on Alana's, like, withers and hooves and flanks, just like a horse to another horse. And it was lovely and beautiful.
Oh, it's so sweet. That's literally the best moment of animal friendship we've had so far. It's so good.
I will say, in a different horse-related moment of animal friendship, Darkness just saves Jonathan's life. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that Darkness is still here, just being Jonathan's very emo.
Yeah, like, the horse saves his life. Like, the horse fights a guy with a knife, which I think is pretty good.
It's pretty good for a horse.
It's not as good as Alana apologizing to Moonlight, because sometimes you just gotta apologize to your horse.
Oh, no, I mean, that is the best animal friendship moment in this book. I just, like, figured if we were talking horse moments.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jonathan's horse saves his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Faithful's still upholding the patriarchy, but there were a couple good Faithful moments in this as well. I liked, you know, his, death and
StarClan.
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 Liked his death.
No, I mean, like, it was an emotionally affecting scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
That scene, I didn't remember it having been as violent as it was.
It was very violent.
Very violent. It was not a fun end. I just adopted a cat. I've always been a cat person, so it would have been upsetting anyways, but I just adopted a cat, and he's a small black cat. And it made me very upset to read Faithful dying in that way.
That was horrifying.
Yeah, no, I'm right. He does it saving Alana.
But, like, that was a really upsetting scene to read, and it was, like, very visceral, like...
Yeah. Like, and it wasn't even, like, dwelled on or anything. It was just, like, one sentence, and it was bad. It was bad to read.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Right, it's so quick at the end there that Alana loses her brother, and then her cat, and then, you know...
Kills Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, kills Alex, and then loses her sword that she was all emotional about in the past, but, like...
Loses her sword.
I mean, I know the sword is, like, less important than, like, a person, but, like, she just... Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the other Faithful thing that I wanted to mention is just, when they're talking about, Bori and how she's, like, Alana as a team, and, Alana says, surely I didn't think I could beat an entire army single-handed, and Faithful says, you still do, which is pretty cute.
It's so good.
Yeah. I also like, who was it? The Goddess.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently is really good buddies with Faithful, which, despite the fact that, you know, we don't like Faithful.
Or the Goddess.
Or the Goddess. They both enforce the patriarchy too much.
They both enforce the patriarchy, but they're friends and refer to each other as such, and
it's pretty good.
Nice to have cat friends.
Yeah. Okay, wait. If Faithful's not okay, I don't know whether or not Faithful is a normal cat. If Faithful's not a normal cat, then he groups himself like a regular cat, and he got set up with a lady cat. So what's going on? Secondly, he is a normal cat, he's a warrior cat, and he ascended to StarClan.
Okay, so, I mean, how do you explain him talking to humans?
A lot of people project a lot, although Liam had like a really scared reaction to it, which makes me think
several people have.
Yeah, but I think like Liam was the first one in a while where I was like, oh, this is alarming to him. Mm-hmm. So now I'm just trying to figure out whether like all cats can talk to people and that's why Ali Maktab has so many, or like
I did think it was funny how often Alana, by this book, is just casually having conversations with Faithful in front of other people.
Yeah, and everybody's just kind of, like, okay with it. Everybody just lets that happen.
Yeah.
I don't... You know, there's a lot of things that I don't understand about Faithful. But he does... What I'm saying is he does a lot of normal cat stuff. So if he's not a normal cat, what's up with that?
I mean, I would say that he is a cat, for sure, just not a normal one.
Yeah, so he still does cat things, he just has extra abilities on top of it.
Yeah. I mean, Alana's a very magical human, Faithful's a very magical cat.
Okay, so it's the third sibling turned into a cat.
So, like, not to cut off your super good fan theories, Amy, but our next segment is the one where you have to leave and we say these things behind your back.
Yeah, okay, give me a minute. Bye, I'll miss you.
So Amy's leaving, and there's going to be some music, and then there's going to be some spoilers, and then there'll be some more music. So if you don't want to hear the spoilers, fast forward to the next music. I don't have a lot of stuff, but just like, speaking of, which we didn't actually do in this episode, so never mind, not speaking of, but there's like so much Pair the Spares in this book, and then also just like future Pair the Spares with Raoul and Burry.
Oh yeah.
First of all, Raoul and Burry is going to happen. I don't think we should discuss it until it happens.
Yeah, we can discuss it when it happens.
Because I want to actually reread it first, and also I love it, so I refuse to refer to it as Pair the Spares. Even though that's what it is.
Just in the context of this book, it seems so Pair the Spares. Yeah. I mean, they've barely met as of this book.
They don't get together for like 16 years.
I know, it takes,
a long
I love them.
Mm-hmm. So, the Crooked God made an appearance.
Did, yeah.
And it was very brief and very exciting, and I really liked the line that it said that the Crooked God, his smile as wicked as George's own. I'm like, hey. We're gonna talk about this more.
I love him.
I love him a lot.
I'm excited in general about, like, so we got the Crooked God, and we also got the Hag.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, the Hag.
Which was very exciting.
Yes.
And then, I mean, we also got references to, you know, the Copper Isles and Carthag, which is just good, like, setup for the future, and I'm really excited to get to those places and see those people.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Okay, I think that's mostly it. So we can call Amy back. It was a quick section.
Yeah. When is Amy going to learn about the cat? Is it really going to take all the way until...
I mean, are we going to wait until Becca Cooper?
But the cat doesn't come back until Becca Cooper anyway, so it's not like we'll be talking about the cat.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, it's not like really... There's not like a lot more information.
There's not a lot more. Yeah.
We're back.
Hi.
With Amy now.
Hi.
Hey, Amy.
So, let's move on to Chamber of the Ordeal and rate this stuff. Let's, I guess, start with animal friendship. Because we talked about that recently.
It was good.
It was good.
It was good.
It was good.
Good out of 10.
I still think there's a long way to go up from here that I'm aware of. So I think, like, curving my scale with that in mind, I'd say maybe just like a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10. Maybe I'll go with a 6 out of 10.
I'd give it a 6.5 because it was just, I love the horse.
That interaction with Moonlight was just the best.
I'm not even a horse person, and I still loved it. So, like, yeah, I think I might go with a steady 6 out of 10.
I feel like it's, like, disrespectful to Faithful to not give this a high ranking for Faithful literally dying for his friend.
I'm okay with disrespecting him.
That's true. He's
a misogynist.
He supports the patriarchy.
Yeah. Faithful is really the character who I think has suffered most on this reread for me, because as a kid, he was an awesome magical cat friend, and now he's a magical cat friend who enforces the patriarchy and asks her when she's gonna get married.
Okay, that's true. I'm gonna give this like an 8 out of 10 though, because I don't know what animal stuff is gonna happen next, so I'm going off of my own thing. And also there were other horse moments, like Alana just like would reminisce about jumping over a gorge with her best friend Moonlight.
That was pretty good too. We didn't even mention that earlier. Okay, but let's talk about nostalgia ratings.
I would give this, honestly, a 10 out of 10 for nostalgia. This is just in terms, I know this is 100% because I'm just coming off of the previous 3 books.
Yeah.
And it's so very different in terms of, like, my reaction to them. It just feels like a very drastic leap into what I just really feel is, like, classic Tamara Pierce. Like, this is the stuff I'm here for. We get Thayet, we get Burry. I love them both.
Yeah, no, I think I'll give it a 9 out of 10, largely for Thayet and Burry showing up, but also just, I mean, the good friendship in general. Alana being incredibly powerful and wonderful.
Yeah. No.
And,
Same.
I mean, Tom feelings, Alex feelings, it's good stuff. Give it a 9 out of 10.
So many feels. I'd probably also give it like an 8 or 9. I had a good time reading it.
Yeah. So I can't have nostalgia for it, so can my rating just be, did Amy cry?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. She did.
Good rating. Solid.
Yes, Amy, I'm sorry we have a whole rating system that you are excluded from, so feel free to say whatever you want.
Okay.
Going off the last 2 episodes, it's everyone rates it on nostalgia, and Amy makes up her own different rating that changes at her whim.
Yes.
So that works.
Alright, what's Amy feeling? Cry.
Okay, good. And who would you all recommend this book to? Okay, I would say I would recommend it to pretty much anyone who can read adult romance, like complicated romantic relationships and like sexual relationships. Mm-hmm. But I honestly, I would tell people to just read this book and not start with the rest of the series. Like, start with a different Tamara Pierce series, but like you can read this book as a standalone, I think. So I would recommend it widely.
Right, especially if you're reading it as a prequel, so like you've read the other stuff and you're going back and filling stuff in.
Mm-hmm. I similarly would recommend this to like slightly older audiences because of, the maturity.
Right, not like middle graders.
Yeah. And it would, it's nice for audience to have slightly more, experience with media so they can really engage with it fully. So, there were a lot of good things, but it's nice to be able to like critically look at like Liam's behavior and that dark cat.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would recommend it to pretty much a lot of people because it's a standalone, but honestly, I'd recommend it to everyone I know because there is a scene where a woman fights an ape with a sword. Like,
that's fair.
You don't have to care about any other part of it. But yeah, so if I'm... You know what? No, that's my whole answer.
Good. Solid.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you all are pointing out that you can read it as standalone, which I think is a very good point, and I hadn't considered when I was thinking about this question earlier. But yeah, I think you all had the right reading order for this. We've discussed that I'm the only one that read the Alana books first, with the notable exception, of course, of Amy.
Sorry, Amy.
Well, to be fair, I read Kel first, but only one.
You did read First Test first, that's true. But I think this is good to read as a prequel. I think it's also like, I know we're a little maybe hesitant to like, certainly some of the misogyny and stuff is stuff that maybe you wouldn't want to be exposed to as a young kid, but also I think it's questioned enough in this book that I don't think that makes it an issue. I mean, it's an issue. Obviously, it's something that you would want, you would want to read critically, but I think that it's questioned enough in the text that, like, I wouldn't have the same reservations about giving this to a kid as I would with the other books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And right, I mean, like, the previous books in this series each have, like, such clear and obvious issues that would make me not want to recommend it. Like, I mean, the first 2 have a lot of sort of like gender and sexual trauma, and then the third one has very clear and present race issues. And right, this one has things to be critical about, but it doesn't have like any single glaring flaw like that. So obviously every book should be read critically, but definitely recommend this more widely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Palace Gossip. I have a letter here from Tom Trabond, who asked us, or, I know we've already talked about this to some extent, but mentions that Tamara Pierce, who he refers to as Tammy, which is people just a thing that I know people do it. It breaks my brain. But anyway, Tom Trabond says that Tammy actually said that Robert was bisexual, not gay, and that he posits that he's very much one of the characters that contribute to a stigma against non-monosexual people. The books don't make that clear, but there is specifically a villainous bisexual trope that he very much fills with, femininity in terms of fashion sense and stuff, and then phallic imagery and power plays. Mm-hmm. That's what they say. Yeah,
I think you definitely see, like, the villainous bisexual trope is really linked to, a character type who uses sexuality manipulatively mm-hmm. and in order to accomplish goals, and without regard for, the gender of the person who they are, like, making advances towards. So, like, obviously that sort of stuff is purely subtext here.
Yeah, right. I mean, additionally, it's all subtext, but if you read subtext into his various relationships, then he would also fit into the sort of trope or stereotype of bisexuals being promiscuous, mm-hmm. So.
I think we can pretty clearly point to him being coded as bisexual. You know?
Mm-hmm. Especially in this book when we do get the textual reference to him sleeping with Delia. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if we've mentioned before that, like, she's more of an out-and-out villain than some of the male characters, but, like, that's also a creepy, manipulative, age difference relationship.
Yeah. It definitely is. I think we've mentioned her in talking about the people who Roger surrounds himself with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But right, given that that's actually the only textual sexual relationship that he mm-hmm. has, definitely a manipulative one.
There's a point, I don't know what we can exactly draw from this, since it's Alana having a dream, and we don't know to what extent her dreams are based in reality. But Alana has a dream where Roger is, like, being very... How would you characterize him? He's being very, like... He's kind of, like, hitting on her or something?
Yeah, I mean, he does get kind of flirty with her at points.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just... I think, that was something that I thought kind of played into that. But.
Also, this is not really flirting, it's just banter, but I really liked when they actually met up face to face, and she was like, "Oh, good, we're not pretending that we like each other." And she's like, "You look pale, not enough time in the sun." And then he's like, "You're cocky, aren't you? Killed anyone recently?" And she said, "No, it's so depressing to come back and find one's work reversed." So that was just some really good banter that they did.
Man.
Yeah, like, he's good when he's, like, an affable villain, mm-hmm. but usually he is a manipulative villain and, like, a very, again, queer-coded villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think there's problematic elements to his queer coding. I think he's a good villain in general. Mm-hmm. Like, he's creepy and manipulative, and that's bad. I wish it wasn't tied up with, the most queer rep that we get in this series.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's more what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing inherently wrong with having a queer villain. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's clear that up. There's nothing inherently wrong with having villains who are queer. Mm-hmm. There is something wrong when that is, as you said, the most queer rep that you get in the large majority of this entire universe.
Yeah, and it's historically wrapped up in this idea that we cannot, like, have queer people who have good lives and happy endings because we tie queerness up with morality due to, just our history as a people.
Right, well, and specifically that he's, word of God bisexual, and he uses his, seductive, manipulative bisexuality for his villainy. Yes. So he's not just a villain who is queer, but his queerness is so inherently tied to his villainy.
Exactly.
Right. So that it becomes something where you're not sure if he were a real person in the modern day, would he identify as bisexual, or is this a thing he is doing as a tool? Mm-hmm. And the like blurriness between that is not a good thing to have in a villain.
Not great.
As
Nope.
Your closest thing to a queer character on the page.
Actually, I think that the thing I said earlier about Liam and Roger and me being like okay with that is because that is not that would not be a relationship in which Roger was specifically manipulating someone. That would be Roger being bisexual for the sake of being bisexual.
Yeah.
That was a weird way to say that.
No, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think, like, I don't really feel the need to parse out how much I ship each of Roger's specific relationships, because it's none for all of them.
I'm not coming at it from there. I'm just saying that, like, were there to be a relationship with Roger that was not explicitly related to his villainy, I would be more comfortable with him being a bisexual villain. I don't need to do a ship war. Don't add me.
Yeah. Anyway, Tom Tremont, thank you for the question. Or the discussion point, I guess.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I'll also read the people who have interacted with us on Twitter. Thank you for doing that. Thanks to Ziggy T. Shoots, Rebecca S.W., Indigo Han, writer S.T. McGee, Catherine Nizzer, Koala Beans, Aquadrop25. I just put us in here also.
Yeah, thanks. Read our names.
Okay. Aurora Arborealis, Non-Binosaur, Amy M. Gioc, Heliological, Alexandra Koch, and Blackness Dyer.
Thank you for crediting us for interacting with our own Twitter.
So some of those weren't us.
Hey, we were in the notifications. I just wrote down everyone in the notifications.
Yeah. I mean, all of our tweets are really good.
They are.
So, like,
They are, so you should check them out.
Oh, totally.
And also you should interact with us on Twitter at Tortall Recall. Or our personal accounts if you want to. They were in that list. You can find us.
Yeah, feel free to become our friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, become our friends.
I thrive off of internet friendship.
Mm-hmm. You can also become our friend at our Tumblr at tortallrecall.tumblr.com, or you can send us an email, tortallrecall@gmail.com, or you can go to our website, tortallrecall.com. Or you can look us up on iTunes, where we're called Tortall Recall. And you can leave us a rating or review.
I would say that you can just Google Tortall Recall, but you can't because you'll just get a bunch of results that are like, did you mean Total Recall?
It's so true. I mean, you can, like, if you Google it in quotes, you're probably good.
Probably. I haven't tried that because I'm not good at technology and computers.
Actually, I think we're now at the point where if you Google Tortall Recall, it'll say, did you mean Total Recall? But then it will actually give you our website.
Oh, nice.
So you can go do that.
The big time.
Wow.
Recognized by Google.
We should mention that we're planning on taking a little break before we start with the Dane series, Immortals. We're not totally sure what we're gonna do for the next episode, but we will let you know.
Yep.
When we know about it.
We'll definitely have at least one episode next month.
Yep.
In case you were curious, our actual episode release schedule is that we read one book a month, and we release our episodes on the first and third Saturdays of the month, roughly.
Yeah. And we'll see how this changes, because I do think we might hit some books in the future where we need more than 2 hours to talk about them.
Fair.
Or this episode is actually going to be significantly over an hour, so more than however long we're taking right now.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I think that's about it. Amy, Aurora, someone want to sign us out?
Aurora, do you have your heart in this?
Amy, I believe in you.
Okay, wait. See ya, Tortellini.
Woo!
Nice.
Did a great job.
Yes.
I'm gonna stop recording because this is absurdly long.
Yeah.
Okay. 50 minutes, holy